Hi guys, it's Jess from Honest Fiction, and welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I am going to be sharing my January wrap-up. Alright guys, so this wrap-up is going to look and sound a little different than my other wrap-ups. One, I have had the flu for the last 5 days. I am finally getting over it. However, I'm still pretty tired and my voice is a little raspy, so I apologize for that. And I also read 7 books in January. Now that is still a lot of books. However, I typically read between 15 to 20 books a month, so it was a lot less than my average, and I was a little discouraged about that. But the more I thought about it, honestly, I did pretty good this month. So one, I read my top book of the year. I already know I'm going to save the book for the end, but this book completely blew me away, and it might be one of my favorite books of all time. So I'm very excited to talk to you guys about that book. But honestly, 3 out of the 7 books I read this month were over 600 pages. So they were huge time commitments. I also started a Patreon on the first day of January, and that took a lot more of my time than I was anticipating. I'm finally starting to get in a groove, but I think that is why I only ended up reading 7 books this month. But like I said, I read some absolutely amazing books, and I am so excited to talk with you guys about them, especially that one, because oh my goodness. But anyway, if you are unfamiliar with my channel, I post new videos every Wednesday and Sunday. If you haven't yet, please like and subscribe. You can also hit that notification bell to be notified whenever I post new bookish content. You can also check out my Instagram and Goodreads, both linked down below. With all that out of the way, let's talk about the books I read in January. Alright guys, as many of you know, I reread Crescent City, House of Sky and Breath in preparation for Crescent City, House of Flame and Shadow that is releasing on January 30th. I am filming this about 4 days before that release, and I am nervous, guys. I am so unbelievably nervous. So if you want a recap of Crescent City, House of Sky and Breath, I will leave it in the cards and in the description. That recap I filmed is over an hour long, and I feel like that is because this book is so loaded with information, and I was afraid to leave out anything that might be relevant for House of Flame and Shadow. I will also say, this is one of my least favorite books that SJM has ever written. Now, do I feel like it is going to be worth it, and the payoff we get in House and Flame and Shadow is going to be worth having to read this book? Yes, but also I really never want to reread this book if I can help it. It is unbelievably slow-paced. I feel like not a lot happens, and it doesn't have that emotional pull like Crescent City, House of Earth and Blood had. So anytime I reread House of Earth and Blood, I know that ending, I am going to weep. This didn't have that. Now, did it have a surprise ending that the first time I read this, I was like, oh my goodness? Yes. Biggest surprise I've ever had in a book. However, the reread was just not fun. So overall, I'm really hoping House of Flame and Shadow just knocks it out of the park and is absolutely phenomenal. And I feel like it's going to be one of those books that it either is going to be adored or despised, and I feel like there's not going to be a big middle ground depending on what SJM does with the characters and the world as a whole. Now, I will be doing a live show along with a bunch of other co-hosts on February 27th for Crescent City, House of Flame and Shadow. If you guys want to join, it will be at 7 PM EST on my channel, and I am so excited. It's going to be great. So I hope you guys join us for that. But yeah, I cannot wait to read Crescent City 3. And next up for fantasy romance, I read White Horse, Black Knights, and this was a time. So the story is following Sabine, and in this world there are marked ones, and these people are marked by the gods to have special gifts. So Sabine is a marked one, and she has been marked to be able to communicate with animals. Now, she is being raised in this convent and is being horribly abused. That is until she is selected by a high lord to become his future intended bride. Now, Sabine just wants to live a happy, free life amongst the animals. However, she is forced to now marry this high lord and really has no interest in doing so. So she is trying to figure out a way to escape. And she thinks she has found this way when she finds out that her intended husband wants Sabine to travel completely nude on horseback for 21 days to his kingdom. Now, she will be traveling with the High Lord's most trusted guard, who is also a marked one, but she is hoping this 21-day journey will give her a chance to escape. And the story goes from there, and oh my goodness, it was so much fun. So I will say the love interest in this has a very unique ability, which I thought was a little out there, but overall, I just loved all of the Toucher and You Die vibes in this book. I also loved the romance and the angst, and it was just a very, very fun story. I am so excited for the second book to release. However, there isn't a release date yet for the audiobook, but I'm hoping it comes out very, very shortly because I love this and highly, highly recommend if you are a fan of fantasy romance. This was such a good time. And next up is actually my Patreon book club pick for January. It is Thief of Silver and Souls by Evie Chase. This is a Wide Shoes fantasy romance, and I will say it is unlike any other Wide Shoes I've read, mostly because it was not spicy at all, and that is probably my one critique of this book because it is rather long. However, there wasn't a lot of spice going on, but I did absolutely love the magic system. It kind of operates on the law of equivalent exchange, and also there's a bunch of mystery, and it was a very, very enjoyable read, and I'm very excited to read the sequel. Now, this story takes place in a world where there are people that will give up limbs in order to praise the gods, and in exchange, they are rewarded hopefully with a power from said god. Now, there are also people that are born with innate magical ability, and they are seen as evil. Our main character was born with this innate magical ability, and she accidentally kills her sister at a very young age when she's still unable to control it. Now, she has grown up with this resentment and has decided to become a Robin Hood type character where she steals from the rich to give to the poor. One day, while doing this, she ends up stumbling upon a noblewoman who is passing away, and while trying to save this noblewoman, she accidentally takes the noblewoman's soul into herself. So now she is being haunted by the ghost of this noblewoman who is in her head, and this woman tells her, hey, I know of a conspiracy that is going on in this college. Thousands of people are going to die if you don't stop it. You need to help me. So our main character reluctantly agrees, and when she gets to this college, she ends up meeting the noblewoman's partners, and they're just these very attractive guys, all with very different personalities, but all very, very handsome and charismatic, and obviously going to be the love interests, and it goes from there. But like I said, I wasn't expecting quite as much story as we were given in this book. It was very, very entertaining in terms of trying to figure out what this conspiracy is, who's involved, there's a bunch of other suspects, and I had so much fun. So I'm very excited, like I said, to read the sequel when it is eventually available via audio, and I highly recommend. And next up I read a post-apocalyptic Wide Shoes romance. So this is Ensnared by Rebecca Quinn, and I highly recommend picking up the audiobook for this. It is narrated by Joe Arden, Teddy Hamilton, and just all of my favorite male narrators. And had I read this physically, it would probably be a 2.73 star. But because I listened to the audiobook, it is definitely a 4-star. I can listen to those guys read off my grocery list. And if they throw in a couple growls and My Girl, easily. They are so talented. But anyway, the story is following a girl who is seen as very meek. She used to be a librarian. She's been with her high school sweetheart forever. And then the world ends up ending. So her fiance ends up passing away, and she is just trying to survive on her own. Well, she ends up being found by a group of guys that attempt to SA her, and she is just running for her life when she runs into another group of guys, and all of these men actually are ex-military, and they agree to take her in. However, they have one caveat, and that is that they tell her that they had taken in women before, and it ended up causing problems between them as a group. So if she agrees to stay with them, she also has to agree to be with all of them. And she agrees, and the story goes from there. But overall, this was a fun Wide Shoes romance. Have I read better Wide Shoes? Yes. Have I also read better post-apocalyptic? Yes. But it was entertaining and fun. So if you are wanting to check out a debut author, and definitely, like I said, check out the audiobook, highly recommend Ensnared by Rebecca Quinn. And the first book I actually read in January was Mafia Virgin by Mila Finelli. This is the last book in the Kings of Italy series, and I am so sad to see the series come to an end. This was one of the first Mafia series I ever read. I've read the books as they've slowly released, and I just cannot wait to read more from this author. I will say this was probably one of my least favorite in this series, although this was my most anticipated because I couldn't wait to get Emma's story. So this story is following Emma, and she's considered the good girl of this family. She is one of Frankie's younger daughters from the first book, Mafia Darling, or younger sisters from the first book, Mafia Darling. And she is the one that is closest to her father. So her father did some pretty deplorable things in the previous books. However, now he's older, he's sickly, and Emma is the only one who is taking care of him. Now, because of some interesting situations, Emma has to secretly marry a stranger named Giacomo. And Giacomo and Emma, have to have a baby within a year because of this situation. Now, Giacomo really has no feelings for or against Emma. He just wants to get out of this marriage because he has his own family situation to deal with, but he eventually realizes that he has to put a baby inside her. So if you are a fan of breeding kink, look no further. This has the whole breeding kink thing going on in spades. I still don't know where I stand with that particular kink. I don't know how I feel about it. But I will say I wanted a little bit more from Giacomo and Emma's romance. Like, they kind of seemed very lukewarm towards each other, and then suddenly they were madly in love. Like, I wanted a little bit more of a build up to that and more of a connection before they fell in love and realized that they really did love each other. But overall, it was still a really great read, and like I said, I love this series overall. So highly recommend, if you have not picked up the Kings of Italy series yet, definitely do so. And that brings us to the final 2 books I read in January, and what I believe will be my top 2 books of 2024, which is insane because it is only the first month of the year. However, these books shattered me and somehow put me back together. I have never had such an emotional connection to a book, and I was just completely blown away. So we have Saving Six, which is the 3rd book of the Boys of Tommen series, and then probably more importantly, Redeeming Six. This book was unbelievable. I have never cried so much while reading a book. I also have never honestly felt physically ill while reading certain scenes. This was such an unbelievable story of just watching this person have so much put on his shoulders and just have such an unfair life, and how he was able to come out of it. And I was just, like I said, I was completely blown away. Like, it's so hard to put into words how much went into these 2 books. And I loved the first 2 books of the Boys of Tommen series. Shannon and Johnny's story was very beautiful. However, it does not compare to these 2 books. These books were just a whole new level of, one, trauma and horrible events, but also the beauty of love and having that one person in your corner that can pull you out of all of these horrible situations. And I will say, please check trigger warnings. It is very, very rare that I get triggered by a book. I'm pretty much open to reading anything, unless it involves animal cruelty. Like, that is a hard no for me. This book doesn't have that. However, there were parts of this book that I had to close the book and take a couple deep breaths just to get through, because of some vile things that go down and that happen. And this is what our main character has gone through his entire life. And just thinking about that, it is such an emotional read. Like, I can never talk about this book without tearing up. It is so unbelievably good. So just to give you an idea, if you are unfamiliar with the Boys of Tommen series as a whole, the first 2 books are following Johnny Lynch and Shannon. Shannon is this girl that is living a very horrible life. Her father is an alcoholic. She's being bullied at school, and her mother ends up pulling her out of her school and brings her to Tommen University, which is a private school, where on the first day she ends up getting knocked unconscious by a rugby ball, and the player that kicked that ball is Johnny Kavanaugh, and it is Johnny and Shannon's romance, and it's really Johnny getting Shannon out of such a tough situation. Well, Saving Six and Redeeming Six are about Joey, who is Shannon's older brother, and although we see him in the first 2 books, we have no idea what he has been grappling with since he was a young child, and the burden he has placed upon himself in order to take care of his younger siblings. And it is just such an amazing story. And if you read any book I recommend, if you are emotionally up to it, I understand there are people that probably will not be able to read this book, and I was almost one of them. This book kind of put me in a dark headspace for a little bit. So just know that, like, make sure you are comfortable reading this book, but it's blew me away, and Chloe Walsh is officially one of my favorite writers of all time. I feel like everyone needs to at least pick up the first 2 books in the Boys of Tommen series, and highly, highly recommend. I cannot wait for the 7 to come out, which is another character that we meet in this book, Jared, I always say his name wrong, Gipsy. And those, I believe, are releasing later this year. So I will definitely be reading Gipsy's story and pretty much anything Chloe Walsh puts out. But wow, these books were just so amazing. And I am so happy that I was able to read this beautiful story. And like I said, highly, highly recommend. All right, guys, those are all the books I read in January. Thank you so much for watching. And please let me know down in the comments below if you read any of the books I mentioned, which one was your favorite. And I'd also like to say a huge thank you to my Paladin protectors, Amanda and Erin. Thank you guys so much for supporting my channel. And I said this already, I post new videos every Wednesday and Sunday. And if you haven't yet, please like and subscribe. I will see you all next week. Bye.